Hello, everyone, and welcome to this brief training for ESG CV Ineligible Costs. The agenda for this training includes a background of information that we're going to discuss, some reminders, examples of ineligible costs, and resources. So while monitoring ESG CV subrecipients, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, otherwise known as HCD, has found ESG CV funds were used on some ineligible costs. Because of this, subrecipients have had to reimburse HCD for ineligible costs charged to the ESG CV grant. To avoid instances of repayment in the future, HCD has developed this brief training on examples of ineligible costs for their ESG CV subrecipients. Please note that this is not an exhaustive list. Please refer to the ESG Program Interim Rule and Notice CPD 21-08 for more information on eligible costs under the ESG CV program. A few reminders: all costs must be documented. You can look at the links below for financial management information and cost principles when you are looking for information on how costs must be documented. All participants served must be eligible for ESG CV assistance. And please note that if a participant is not eligible for ESG CV assistance, then the cost is not eligible. We are now going to talk about some examples of ineligible costs across all ESG CV components. First, any staff time that was spent on non-ESG CV activities is not eligible. Food or drinks for staff is not eligible. Providing permanent cell phones to program participants is not eligible. And please remember that cell phones are available to be loaned to clients on a temporary basis and must be returned to the agency when the participant exits the program. The phone bill must be in the agency's name. Also ineligible is fuel, vehicle repair, and vehicle maintenance expenses for participants' vehicles. This also includes gas gift cards. I am now going to talk about some examples of ineligible costs for the street outreach component. First is serving individuals or families who are not living in an unsheltered location. Also ineligible are emergency responder supplies such as bulletproof vests or shields. COVID tests that are not administered by licensed medical professionals are ineligible, as well as COVID tests administered in an office or private lab setting. Fuel vehicle repair or vehicle maintenance on participant vehicles is not eligible, nor is transporting participants to locations other than emergency shelters or other service facilities. And lastly, you must follow procurement standards if you are going to be purchasing or leasing vehicles for staff. If you do not adhere to procurement standards, those costs are not eligible. The following costs are eligible, however, you should be cautious. Gift cards for street outreach are technically allowable. However, the gift card expense cannot be reimbursed at the time of purchase. Gift cards are eligible for reimbursement only after a participant returns a copy of their purchase receipt. The agency verifies that the purchased items are eligible. The agency submits for reimbursement with the client receipt included as part of the backup documentation, and only for the amount expended on the receipt for eligible items. The original gift card purchase documentation must also be submitted, including proof of full payment of gift cards if they were purchased using a credit card. Next, we will cover examples of ineligible costs for emergency shelter. For example, serving individuals or families who do not meet categories 1, 2, 3, or 4 of HUD's definition of homelessness. Ineligible would be childcare in an unlicensed childcare center. Ineligible would also be childcare for children that are over the age of 12 or those with disabilities that are over the age of 19. Also ineligible are education services that are not necessary to obtain and maintain housing, as well as legal services for immigration and citizenship matters and issues related to mortgages. Also ineligible would be legal services retainer fees or contingency fee arrangements. Additional examples of ineligible emergency shelter costs include life skills training that are not necessary to function independently in the community, outpatient health and mental health services that are not provided by licensed medical professionals, COVID tests that are not administered by licensed medical professionals, and COVID tests that are administered in an office or other private lab setting. And lastly, substance abuse treatment services that are not provided by licensed or certified professionals. Additional ineligible emergency shelter costs would be fuel, vehicle repair, or vehicle maintenance on participant vehicles, purchasing or leasing vehicles for staff without adhering to procurement standards, holiday decorations, pet fees as part of hotel-motel expenses, renovations on a shelter that is not owned by a government entity or private nonprofit organization, and property acquisition and new construction. We will now cover examples of ineligible costs for rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention projects. First, all costs related to serving an individual or family who does not meet HUD's definition of homeless under Category 1 or Category 4 and live in an emergency shelter or other place described in Category 1 of the homeless definition if they are qualifying under Category 4. These would be ineligible costs for the rapid rehousing component. Examples of ineligible homelessness prevention costs would be any costs related to serving an individual or family who does not meet Category 1 of HUD's definition of at risk of homelessness, or Categories 2 or 4 of HUD's homeless definition, and have an annual income below 30% of the Aryan median income. If you are providing costs to clients that do not meet these criteria, those costs are ineligible. Here are some examples of ineligible costs for both rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention. First would be security deposits that are equal to more than 2 months worth of rent. Deposits or payments for telephone, internet, cable, satellite, or television service. Utility arrears that total more than 6 months of arrears. And note that the utility bill must show the monthly breakdown of arrears. You cannot pay for pet deposits, damages, or fees, including pet fees for hotel-motel costs. You cannot pay for temporary storage fees accrued after the participant moves into housing, nor can you pay for storage fees that are in arrears. You cannot pay for legal services that are necessary to resolve a legal problem that prohibits the participant to obtain or maintain permanent housing. And lastly, you cannot pay or modify their debt. Additional ineligible rapid rehousing and homeless prevention costs include rental assistance if that participant is receiving rental assistance through other public sources, if there is not a rental assistance agreement between the provider and the owner, if the rent does not comply with HUD's standard of rent reasonableness, and if there is not a legally binding lease, unless the assistance is solely for rental arrears. You also cannot pay rental arrears that total more than 6 months of arrears. You cannot pay for late payment penalties incurred by the provider, and you cannot provide advanced rental assistance payments. Please note that the last month's rent payment is allowable if it is paid at the same time as the security deposit and first month's rent. Here are some examples of eligible rapid rehousing and homeless prevention costs that you should be cautious with. First, ESG CV funds may be used to buy furniture and household furnishings for use by program participants while they are receiving rapid rehousing or homeless prevention assistance. However, furniture and furnishings purchased with ESG CV funds must be retained by the ESG CV funded provider for continued use of the program when the household exits the program. Please refer to the HUD document Disposition and Record Keeping Requirements when using ESG CV funds to purchase furniture or household furnishings for more information. Here are some examples of ineligible HMIS and administration costs. Staff and overhead costs directly related to carrying out program activities. Note that costs directly related to carrying out program activities would fall under the other program components of emergency shelter, street outreach, rapid rehousing, or homelessness prevention. You also cannot purchase food or drinks for staff trainings. We are now going to provide you with some helpful resources. Always remember to ask your grant administrator if you need any guidance on eligibility of potential expenses. We also encourage you to review previously recorded webinars that are on HCD's website under the Webinars and Trainings tab. This includes ESG and ESG CV financial management for indirect costs, monitoring best practices, and grant management principles. There are also some links that you might find helpful on this page. Please visit the HUD Exchange for any ESG and ESG CV resources and FAQs. As mentioned previously, visit the furnishings guidance at this link. You can also submit and ask a question on the HUD Exchange. You can find eligible costs at the ESG program interim rule link. And we also recommend for financial management cost principles, you visit 2 CFR 200. Thank you very much for attending today's training.